I'm very upset by Roe v. Wade being overturned by the states. I think it sets a terrible example. It is a strike against women and, and human rights more generally. I know that me being a man writing about this is potentially quite problematic, but that is why I've drawn the conclusion I have. I think this is bad news, and I hope I've done a good job of illustrating the problem. This is called the world against women. I cannot fathom why anyone would want to turn the clock back so far when it needs to be wound forcefully forward to autonomy and care for all the oppressed. The only reason I can see for counterclockwise movement would be to take inspiration and ideas from our nature based cousins of the past and present so that we might live in greater symbiosis with the earth instead of destroying it and ourselves. But we must diligently strive to avoid the prejudice of pre industrialized times. That prejudice has been completely pervasive for women. For much of American history, women were not allowed to own property or vote, and in some countries today, they cannot drive and must hide everything but their eyes. And in more progressive places, they are not given equal pay or the same prestige as their male counterparts. Imagine being sexualized from the tip of your toes to the core of your soul. Everywhere you go, you risk being bothered or worse by some man who thinks he has the right to your company. And if he has enough evil in him, he could probably do the worst you could fear. Imagine living in such a world. That horror was all too real for a 10-year-old child who was raped and, under her state's new rules, is being forced to carry her pregnancy to term. If it was up to me, that rapist gets locked away for a very long time. That poor little girl gets her pregnancy terminated immediately, and she gets all the love and compassion that can be given so that she might one day recover from her terror. I was surprised to learn abortion was legal in the States until the mid 1800s, but not surprised why they banned it. White people feared immigrants would overwhelm their stranglehold on power, and the dogmatism of the church bolstered their bigotry. I've never understood how someone who loves Jesus could side with the rulers and swallow their lies. Jesus was a rebel who struck down the tables of the crooked bankers of his day. If he were alive now, he would preach vehemently against the greed that causes so many to be homeless and starve. And let's not forget, the woman he loved most of all was a sex worker. How do you think he would feel about our modern day Pharisees having dominion over her body? Maybe she decided it was best not to have the baby of a man who was to be crucified. I'm no expert on when consciousness begins. I couldn't say whether or not life begins at conception. I'm sure that in many cases, an adopted baby has a fantastic life, but I can't be sure that its mother didn't suffer unfathomably to bring her pregnancy to term. I can't be sure that her baby goes to a good family. Many languish in foster care their entire childhood. I'm sure there are monsters who present well enough to fool the experts and may treat a child in such a way they never recover. I know that incredible people can come from the worst circumstances. My experience has taught me that if the circumstances are too awful, most never recover enough to have a good life. I can't be sure that 10-year-old girl will ever be okay. And I can't see how any committee of men, blinded by dogmatism and corruption, could reach the most humane conclusion. Because the pregnancies take place inside a woman's womb, and because she must bear so much of the burden herself, must, must leave it up to her to decide. Let's get that stuff overturned. Let's get back thinking about rights and freedoms in people's bodies.